Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 100 of the Stephen King podcast. It's been a long road to get to this episode. And because it's such a special event, I've asked two powerhouse guests to return. And I'm grateful that both of them were able to make it. And first up, of course, is my old podcast buddy, Hans Lilja. How you doing, Hans?
Hi.
Man.
Hi, good to be back.
Man, it's tough doing podcasts by myself.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Not that I'm trying to make you feel guilty or anything. And another special guest that's been on several times is writer, Stephen King expert, and generally one of the nicest Canadian American-based citizens that you could meet, Bev Vincent.
Hello. Can't believe it's been 100 episodes. That's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you very much. Yes, I know some podcasts get there a lot quicker, but considering the rate we put these out, it's taken us almost over 5 years, but we've done it. And of course, this podcast is the year of King in 2019, which has that extra special connotation because it is the year of 19. And King has had some pretty big years, especially in 2017. And this year, we're looking at four main topics. I don't know if there's any other ones, but if you guys want to bring those up, we will. But we're going to be talking about 3 movies based on King works and 1 new book by Stephen King. And those works are Pet Sematary, which is coming out April 5th. It Part 2, which is coming out September 6th. The Institute, which I'm assuming is coming probably mid-September. And then Dr. Sleep, which has been, for me, notably moved up from 2020 to 2019 in November. And we'll talk about a little bit more when we get into it. But before we do that, I wanted to give a chance for Bev and Hans to update everybody on what they've been up to over the last while since they've been on the podcast. And I'll start with you, Hans. I've been looking at your posts there. You've become quite the book tour dude.
Yeah, I've been doing lectures on King here in Sweden, and I have quite a few planned for the fall. So that's when I'll be very busy with those. But basically, I'm traveling around in Sweden and doing lectures on different libraries around in different cities. So that's a lot of fun, meeting a lot of fans. And this doesn't really happen that much with Stephen King in Sweden. So I think a lot of people are happy to meet other Stephen King nerds and talk Stephen King without being looked up on stranged.
And of course, this dovetails with your book.
Yeah, that's moving along really well. I have a lot of editions out now, and the latest was actually the audio edition of it. So that was very exciting to hear someone read it out loud. So that was an experience.
Cool.
And I have a few things coming up as well that I can't really reveal yet, but it will be cool. Looking forward to reveal them.
And they're Stephen King related as well?
Yeah, about my book.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. And that gives me a great excuse to invite you back on the podcast again to talk about them.
Yeah.
Okay, Bev, you've had a pretty busy year as well. I think you've been flying pretty high on your last anthology.
Yes, Flight or Fright came out last September. And this year we'll see it come out in paperback in June from Scribner.
Cool.
And there are a dozen translations that are in the works.
Wow.
A few of them have appeared already, and the rest will be rolling out probably this year or into next year. But just about any language that, the major languages, I think we pretty much hit them all.
Okay.
The Polish one just came out, and it's been interesting to see that there's been a lot of reviews. I think that there's even a Polish audio edition that has come out.
Cool.
Yeah, so this thing has really taken off, if we can
continue
beat the pun into the ground.
Yes, or up into the air.
Yeah.
Also of note is, of course, that one of the stories in your anthology by Joe Hill has been honored, being selected for
Ellen Datlow's Year's Best Anthology.
Yes.
And also nominated for a Bram Stoker Award.
Yes. So that must feel pretty extra special as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the anthology itself wasn't really eligible for awards because of its status as being mostly reprints.
Right.
But the two new works were eligible, and Joe's has been picked up, and there's possibilities of other recognition for that story too.
Right. And what about on your own personal front? Have you anything any pokers in the fire?
I'm not going to tour as extensively as Hans is doing, but I will be appearing at Northern FanCon this year in Prince George, British Columbia.
Oh, so close yet so far.
So that came about because James Douglas, who directed The Dollar Baby of The Doctor's Case, we talked about the movie a little bit, and then they decided that he and Northern FanCon organizer invited me as a guest. So I'll be making a presentation and probably appearing on panels and doing signings and things like that. So that's the first time I've done certainly something in Canada, but something on this scale. It's like a Comic-Con type of event. The first year that it existed, they had William Shatner as their guest.
Wow.
This year they've got people like Alan Tudyk from Firefly. So I'm looking forward to that. I have only ever spent one day before in British Columbia, so I'm looking forward to having just a few days there, but it's way up in the north in Prince George.
Yes, beautiful area too.
And then other than that, the other thing that I hope to see come to fruition this year is my collaboration with Brian Keane.
Yes, he just mentioned that in his email today.
He did,
Yes.
And he followed that up by saying that he was going to do something that was going to destroy his career. So, with one hand he gives and one hand he takes away.
Hopefully, the two things aren't the same reference, but we'll see. That's good.
So he and I have each written a novella, and he's putting the final polishing steps on his final draft that we hope. So the two novellas will get paired together in a book that's called Dissonant Harmonies. And if all goes according to plan, that will come out this year.
Awesome. Well,
cool.
And I haven't really been doing much of anything. I've just plugging away with my podcast. I had knee surgery in February, as listeners know, and I'm just starting to crawl out of that recovery period because it really affects your sleep, or at least it does for me. And so I'm just starting to feel like I'm a normal person again, just starting to get back into the podcasts. And I do want to mention for Bev, I know you're going to be in BC. Unfortunately, that's just not in the ticket for me this year. I've basically burned all my vacation time this year being out. But there is a con in Calgary every August called When Words Collide. And I'm going to put your name down as a suggestion for a guest. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but I just want to let you know that I'm going to do that because that would be awesome for you to come out to that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the year of 2019. We're going to talk first. I want to get everybody's perspective on these four major things that are coming out this season. But before I do that, I'm going to kind of bleed into a little bit of a news item here. And it's very fortuitous that as we record this podcast, there is a film festival in the States called South by Southwest, and it closed today. The opening film was Us, the new horror film by Jordan Peele, which looks very intriguing. And the closing film just happened to be the new Pet Sematary movie. And first reactions are out for the movie. I'm just going to read a couple of tweets. They don't go into any spoilers, but this will just sort of help maybe make you guys rethink your thoughts on some of these items that we're going to talk about and where you rate them. We're going to start off with Haley Fouch, who's from Collider. She says, Pet Sematary has the kind of serious balls any good adaptation should have. The themes and encroaching dread of King's novel are alive and well, but there are enough clever deviations to give diehard fans some welcome surprises. Big ups all around, but Simons, who plays the wife, is a legend. Eric Davis, who I believe is from IGN, Pet Sematary delivers a solid sense of dread from start to finish. It earns its well-timed jump scares and terrific sound design, and gnarly effects add extra layers of creepy. I think King fans will dig it. Move over, Goose, who is the cat from Captain Marvel, if you don't know. It's Church's turn. Heather Wixon, the horror chick. Lots and lots of thoughts on the new Pet Sematary to come. But for now, what I will say is, holy hell, how do I respect how bananas it gets in the third act? Absolutely not what I was expecting at all. Pet Sematary, Raphael Motormayer, who's a geek with an afro, says, is a hoot and a half. Super dark, twisted, gory. This is right up your alley, Hans. And surprisingly funny. More of a dark comedy than the original movie, and it all works once the effed up third act kicks in. The cast is fantastic. Yete Lawrence, who plays Ellie in the movie, is a revelation. What a way to end South by Southwest. Bad Filling Mag They did it. Pet Sematary is a truly disturbing reimagining of Stephen King's most terrifying novel. That change makes so much sense now. And I'll read one more. Perry Nemiroff. Pet Sematary is vicious, and I loved it. Super brutal visuals, and was thrilled to see Widmer and Kolsch, the directors, fully embrace the deeply unsettling themes of mortality from the book. And wow, Jette Lawrence. They really pushed it, and with this adaptation, and it really worked for me, big time. So, of course, we have to take these as a grain of salt, as always, because these are first reactions from people that are invested in these types of movies and that. But it bodes well. And I think ever since, and we'll just sort of segue into the conversation now, let's talk about Pet Sematary. For me, once I saw the second trailer and they revealed the change that they were making, I was going from, okay, this will be an interesting adaptation to, wow, I wonder what they're going to do. And it sounds like in that third act, they're really going to up the game. So that's kind of where I'm sitting with that. Well, what do you think of Pet Sematary, Bev?
Well, my reaction is exactly the same as yours. I would probably have gone to see the movie before seeing the trailers, but once I saw how they reimagined the movie, I said, yes, that's definitely on my list. And at the time when the second trailer came out, there were some complaints that it gave away a lot of the story. The first tweet I saw today out of South by Southwest was, I'm sitting here LOLing at people who think that the trailer gave away too much. They don't know what they have in store for them. So I think we sort of thought we had it all mapped out, and I think there's going to be a lot of surprises for us. So I'm going to studiously avoid everything to do with the movie until I get a chance to see it now, because I think we're in for a treat. I hope so, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Hans?
Yeah, I agree. My expectation for this one definitely went up with all these positive comments on it. I did see one that compared it to Kubrick's The Shining, and that made me a little bit worried. Because we don't know if these people who write good about it are King fans or just regular horror fans that haven't read the book. But I'm positive on it, and I think that the changes they've made, and the big one that, I don't know if we should mention it here or if it's a spoiler, but the big one that they've made, I actually think that could work very well.
Yes,
and they explained quite rationally why they made that change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the fact that they wanted to do so much of it without using CGI and special effects,
right,
which limited them in one aspect of the story. So they found a very interesting solution for that, and I think it's to their credit that they came up with this jaw-dropping change.
Yeah, I agree. And it also avoids, as you mentioned, because you're going to have to get into CGI and effects, but it avoids the Chucky syndrome that the original movie kind of suffers from as well. And I think that it also allows them to bring more of the mythology, like the Wendigo stuff into play as well, into the story. So that should be really cool. And we'll see. All right. So we're all pretty high on that. Now, the next one is coming out on September 6th, and that is It, Part 2. And Hans, where are you sitting with this one?
I'm actually very excited about this one. I think I might even be more excited about this one than the first one, actually. Because, and I know a lot of people say that the grown-up parts aren't as scary as the kid parts. But I think this one will be gorier than the first one. I think it might actually be scarier than the first one. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I think this one will be better than the first one even.
Okay, Bev?
I have modest expectations for this one. The first one blew up to such levels that, you know, how much did that influence what they decided to do with the part 2? You know, it made so much money, first installment, that I worry that they may have changed what they're intended to do with this series to try to at least match what the first one did. And I do tend to agree with the people who say that the story with the adults isn't quite as involving. And I just listened to it again this last year on audio, and I was struck, and I probably knew this, but I'd never really sat down to think about it. The story of the kids takes place over a span of, you know, almost a year, where the story of the adults is compressed into a very short 4 or 5 day period. And so that alone, they have the resonance of the dread from their childhood, but the whole storyline is so compressed that I wonder how they're going to tackle that in this movie. Certainly a good cast, and we haven't seen the last of the kids who were so good in the first movie. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to it, but I think Pet Sematary has really piqued my interest more because now I don't know what I'm going to get out of that movie. I think I have a pretty good handle on what I'm going to see.
Right. Yeah, I'm leaning more towards your opinion on it. I think, as you said, Hans, I don't think the adult part of the story is as strong. It seems to me that in order to elevate this story or this movie to try to match the first one, which I really didn't find that scary. It was more of a thriller. The creepiest parts to me were like the out of focus shots of the librarian hanging behind Ben when he was going through the book. Like that, to me, that was the scariest moment in the movie, really. So I think they're going to have to up the gore, and I'm curious to see how much they're going to lean on the cast from the original movie to try to keep those emotional hooks going from the first movie with the adult cast, and whether that's going to handicap the adult cast a bit, or is that going to be used too much as a crutch? So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. I know there was an interview with the girl with the red hair,
Sophie Lillis.
Yeah, no, the adult.
The adult, yeah.
Oh God, what's her name? I should have it. Oh, Jessica Chastain. She was saying on one interview that she had so much blood, or she said she's on record saying there's one scene that's got the most blood in a horror scene ever, and she said she was like picking flecks of it off her eyeball the next day still. So we can only assume that might be the restaurant scene, but we'll have to see. This one, I'm really curious to see how the Andy Muschietti is going to attack it in terms of trying to build the same level of emotional investment that the first one did. So,
right. Plus, we've already seen the entire story of the kids.
Yes.
So they're involved in the second movie as flashbacks that are going to be showing us new things that we didn't see in the first movie, or just different perspectives on the things that we've already seen.
Yeah. And how much of the kids aged too?
Well, how much of the kids aged, but their decision to peel the two stories apart,
yes,
sort of limits them a bit in what they can do in this second movie, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. All righty, and then next up is probably for us by default. I mean, I'm excited for these movies, but the event of the year is going to be the new Stephen King book coming out in September, The Institute. It has echoes of Firestarter because of the shop, and the premise is very intriguing. I love the book cover with the boy inside the train car. So it seems to be like a mobile facility, and it sounds more like King going back to his horror roots to a large extent as well. And I'm curious to see what you think of this, Bev. I don't know if you have any inside tracks, if you've already read the book.
I haven't read it yet. I don't have any more information than what everybody else does.
Okay, so we're equals for our change. Good.
All right.
What are your thoughts?
Well, any year where there's a new Stephen King novel, that's always a good year. I'm looking forward to reading this one, of course. I really haven't dug down into it any more than the two different synopses that we've seen, the Scribner one and the one from Hodder and Stoughton, which is slightly different. They reveal different parts of the story. Yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting. All I can do is wait.
Right. Hans?
Yeah, I must say that I really love the covers for this book, both the American and the UK, actually. And they're quite different from each other, but they are intriguing and get you curious, I think. And one good thing with this one is that it's actually released the day after the US release here in Sweden. So we're getting a treat this time. It's not
Nice.
very often that happens. Yeah, and I'm intrigued as well. I'm not sure what to make of it, really, from the descriptions we've gotten so far. You get a very tiny part of the plot in it. Mm-hmm. So, it's interesting, and I'm just waiting for it to drop. I just want to read it. So that's definitely the high point of the year.
It feels a little bit like we could be getting another angle on the Breakers, and I have no idea whether the book's going to go in this direction or not. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But these kids seem like perfect candidates for Breakers.
Right, yeah. I'm just wondering too if this institute is sort of like the next generation of the shop, or I wonder if there's going to be any references to that as well. That would be also interesting to see.
Right, because the shop was essentially destroyed.
Yeah.
In King's fiction, it crops up again in other works, but it was essentially the congressional destruction of it, as well as the burning of it. So, this may be what rose out of the ashes.
Yeah. So, all right.
Yeah, that it would be interesting if it was, and we'd get some more backstory to how that happened and around the old shop and things like that, I think. But I also got some Dark Tower vibes from this and the Breakers, and so. But I'm leaning more towards being a shop novel than Dark Tower one.
Yeah. All right. Then we come to our, as so far as we know, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit after this, is the last known commodity of the year is Dr. Sleep, directed by Mike Flanagan, who has, in my mind, is that maybe hopefully not at the zenith of his career, but he's definitely on the upswing after he just did the fantastic, and I know it's people throw around the word too soon, but I really do believe it's going to be considered a classic, is his Haunting of Hill House adaptation for Netflix. I thought it was just a fantastic adaptation, and the way he interweaved the backstory between the two ages of the cast, and of course, the technical prowess that he showed with the episode 6 with the long shots in the funeral parlor and then walking over to the house. And I understand they built the set side by side so that he could do that without having to do any sort of technical trickery. So I'm probably, this is my dark horse. I think that's going to surprise people because of Flanagan's skill with story. I can't wait to see how he merges this sequel to The Shining with presumably 2 versions of The Shining, or 3, if you count the miniseries as well, because I think he's going to do that in some form or manner, whether it's just a cursory thing. And the other thing that's got me intrigued is the fact that they moved this from 2020 to November, which studios typically do when they feel they've got a winner of a picture and they want it to be up for Oscar consideration. Now, I may be reading too much into that, but that's where my mindset is at. What about you, Hans?
Yeah, I must say that I think I'm just as excited about this one being a Stephen King movie as I am that it's Mike who's doing it after Gerald's Game and House of Haunting Hill. I think he's a brilliant director, so if anyone can pull this off, it's definitely him. I'm also a bit worried about how he's going to connect it, if he's going to connect it to the book or the Kubrick movie or the miniseries. I think he has a plan. I hope he has a plan for how he's going to make everything go together, but there's some major differences between the book and at least the Kubrick movie. So it's going to be interesting to see how he solves that. But my hope is that he's going for the book and maybe doing something that connects it to Kubrick's movie. But the main focus is it being an adaptation of the book.
Okay, Bev?
Well, he's got this legacy of the Kubrick movie to have to deal with, and there's going to be a lot of people who only know The Shining from that film. And so he's going to have to acknowledge that at some level, because if he doesn't, then people who go to this say, what's he on about? That character is dead. He died in the movie. So, but he's a smart writer and a smart director. I mean, the fact that he was able to take on Gerald's Game, which people thought for almost 20 years was an unfilmable novel, and that he cracked that one and came up with some fairly innovative ways of handling all of that interior dialogue. And all of the things that he did with The Haunting of Hill House, I mean, he created a 10-episode saga, essentially. So that reflects on his chops as a writer as well as a director. So yeah, I think this could be interesting. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what he does with it. I've enjoyed all of his movies.
Yeah, I think he's going to honor both the novel and the Kubrick movie. Like you said, Bev, I think he almost has to, but it'll be interesting to see how he does that. Also really excited for some of the casting. I mean, Hugh McGregor is a solid choice, but I think Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat was inspired. She been so awesome in the last 2 Mission Impossible movies, and I think that she'll just carry off this character, the swagger of this character with no problem. It's interesting that he got Bruce Greenwood. He's going to have I imagine a large role, but have some part in the movie. And I think Carl Strucken, who he had in Gerald's Game, played the Midnight creature, is back in this movie as well, which is interesting. So we'll have to see. But I think on the scale of public perception, this project is the least known for the average moviegoer, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Pushing it back to November puts it solidly in the holiday movie rush too. There's the Thanksgiving weekend and the Christmas weekend when people see movies more than they would in January or February or March.
Right.
So that move really does show a lot of faith from the studio in the film.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it will be very interesting to see how they're marketing this movie. If they will hit it hard that it's the sequel to The Shining, because if they do, they would have to connect it to The Shining movie, but I guess. And I would assume that they will, since that's the big thing with this one.
Yeah, it's the easier connection to make for sure. So again, it'll be very interesting to see how Flanagan handles that. As usual, I didn't put it here, but King always surprises us with an unexpected, either a short story or something else. I'm wondering what you think the odds of that happening this year are. I'm going to go. I'm pretty sure I'd go over 60% that he's going to give us a surprise this year.
I think we will get some surprise. I'm doubtful that we will get a second book this year, since he would have to squeeze that in between now and September probably then. So I'm doubtful that if there will be another book, but a short story, I would be surprised if there isn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there were short stories. I mean, the surprise birth of The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon is a model that we might hope for. And that book just sort of came to him, and it appeared before the next announced novel even. It just got inserted in the schedule. So, there's always the hope for something like that. But I agree with Hans. I don't think we'll see a second book, novel-length book this year.
Yeah. Unless it's a sequel to Elevation. Falling.
Yeah.
All right. So let's play a little game here. What do you think the public's ranking of these items would be? And I'll go first. So just in case you guys haven't had a chance to think about this, I think obviously It Part 2 is going to be number one in most people's minds, given the success of the first one. I'll put Pet Sematary second, and I'll put the book third and Dr. Sleep fourth. Hans?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely It Part 2 will be the one that people know most about and are expecting and waiting for. Pet Sematary, I found lots of people just finding out about it now. A month before its premiere. Yeah, at least here in Sweden.
Well, that's good in a way.
Yeah, but I think that one will be number two. And I'm not sure. I think if you mean by the public, the Stephen King fans, I definitely think they will find the Institute maybe on the second place even. But the general public might not know much about that one yet. And Dr. Sleep, I haven't seen any promotion about that one. So I guess the Institute and Dr. Sleep will have to share the third place since they aren't that known, as far as I know, at least, to the general public yet.
Okay. Bev?
I'm terrible at lists. I think people will just take them in the order that they come. I think Pet Sematary is going to have a big splash after this weekend. And then we're only a few weeks out from its release. So, anticipation is as high as it's going to get probably within the next little bit of time. I mean, it and the Institute are going to be neck and neck because they're only 4 days apart in terms of their release dates. So, yeah, I mean, but they're both a little bit down the road. So there's time for momentum to build for both of those. And yeah, I think Dr. Sleep is going to be, pun intended, the sleeper of the four. But, I agree, people aren't really going to be getting fired up about that one until probably midsummer or whenever they start their promotion for it in earnest. So, yeah, like I said, I suck at making lists. So,
okay, so
it's the order that they come, I'll say.
Okay, and I'll try to ease your pain as quickly as possible then. What is your anticipation ranking and why?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would probably say in the order that I get to consume them. So Pet Sematary is going to come along, and I'm really fired up to see that one. I'll probably get to read The Institute shortly thereafter that, certainly well before September. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then the two movies as they come out. A couple of things we haven't mentioned that's on the 2019 are the TV and streaming related projects.
Okay.
So Castle Rock, which will have a second season this year. I was quite pleased with what they did with the first one. We have Mr. Mercedes coming up with their Finders Keepers season. We probably will see In the Tall Grass this year on Netflix, which is the Joe Hill King film adaptation.
Okay.
Creep Show. We get to see Survivor type on screen, which be interesting.
Yeah, that should be a lot of fun too. Yeah, I wasn't sure if those were airing this year or not, or next year, because I don't know if they've gone into production yet. But if they come out this year, that's all the better.
I think In the Tall Grass is done filming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one is scheduled for Netflix this year. I don't think it's gotten a date yet, but it's definitely meant to be released this year. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. All right, Hans, what about you?
Yeah, I think that I'm mostly looking forward to The Institute, the book.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, books are books. So that's what I'm most excited about. And after that, I think Pet Cemetery, actually, because I don't know what I'm going to get there. I'm hopefully something really dark and scary. I'm also looking forward to it. I feel I'll know a little bit more of what's coming there. And Dr. Sleep will definitely be interesting. And I think that once they start promoting Dr. Sleep, and if they promote it as the sequel to Shining, I think that will really draw attention to it. So I think that once the promotion starts for that one, it will be very anticipated by people.
Right. Yeah, I would always rate the King book as number one in a given year. So that the Institute's number one for me. Before the Pet Sematary second trailer came out, I was really dark horsing Dr. Sleep because I just think what Flanagan's been doing lately and how he could handle that the Torrance family back history. I'm really excited about that, and I think it will surprise a lot of people. But that Pet Sematary second trailer has forced me to rethink my thing, and I think right now those two are connecting for me, and maybe not surprising. I think it is, like you said, because we know what we're expecting and just how we feel about the adult part of the story. I just think that one's not going to be able to hit the same heights as the first one, and that will be interesting to see how the creative people behind that try to amp it up to do that. So that should be interesting, and that's kind of where I'm sitting with that, with those things right now. It's going to be hard to say, but I think Pet Sematary is going to surprise a lot of people, so that'll be interesting. Yeah, I guess the only thing I worry about it, based on the reactions that we're getting, maybe it's too intense, and that might put some people off. We'll have to see.
I mean, they're both R-rated, it and Pet Sematary, so that sort of limits the audience out of the box.
Right. Yeah,
but it didn't hurt it.
No, but I think the It R was pretty soft, really. I mean, there was a couple of scenes with blood, but it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. And I just think the Pet Sematary, because it's a much more relatable story, is going to be a lot harder for people to stomach. I mean, even given the flaws of the original adaptation, it's still a pretty powerful movie in certain segments. So, the loss of a child for a parent, that's a hard thing for a lot of people. Don't even want to address that at all in any shape, form, or manner.
In a period now when horror is rebounding. I mean, there's been some really, really popular horror movies in the past year or so, and we have the next Jordan Peele movie coming out, of course, and there's a lot of anticipation around that one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think people are sort of in these troubled times. They turn to horror films more as one of the old adages that when people are upset about the way things are going in their lives or in the world around them, that horror seems to be a venue that they go to for an escape. And whether that's true or not, there seems to be an element of truth to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I just think Pet Sematary goes a little deeper than most horror movies do. It hits a little more closer to the heart, but we'll have to see. I'd be pleasantly surprised if it does dominate the box office, but I don't know if there's much coming out at that time. So it's definitely going to be number one. It's just how is it going to do it numbers? I doubt it, but we'll see. I mean, that's a high bar, and I just don't know if that's going to be doable for any horror movie, really. That was quite an accomplishment for that.
Do you guys read the book before the movie?
I try to, but there's so many coming out lately. I just have trouble keeping up with the stuff I'm reading that's new that I haven't read yet. So
I reread Pet Sematary not all that long ago because I did the afterword for the PS Publishing edition of it. So yeah, I probably won't read it again. Dr. Sleep, I might consider reading that again because it's been a while, and as a newer book, I don't have the same sort of depth of familiarity with it.
Yeah,
and then talking about box office, I mean, if you look at what the predictions are, I think they're saying 40 to 50 million opening weekend for Pet Sematary, but that's also not much less than what they started predicting for Chapter 1 of It. And then they started gradually bumping those numbers up the closer they got, and even then they were way off.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Yep. It'll be, because it's to me, it's his creepiest story yet or ever. And I think that the movie will really unsettle some people.
Yeah.
Definitely can do that. So the last question or item they have to discuss is, we know that 2017 with the first It was an amazing year for King with all the TV series that came out in that as well. 2018 definitely wasn't much below that, but I think 2019 is shaping up to be even bigger than the previous 2 years. What do you guys feel about that, Bev?
Well, and the hits keep on coming, because we've got an indication this week that The Talisman might finally get off the ground. Certainly not for 2019, but that there's definitely a golden era that we're in that probably started in 2017, and we're still riding that wave, and there may be a year or two left to it before they run out of books to adapt.
Right. Yeah, at the rate they're going. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that 2017 will be a hard year to beat, both because really lots of stuff were released that year, and also that was the first year that we saw that many new King things coming at the same year for quite some time. So that was a very exciting year, and then we had a lot in 2018, and 2019 seems to be in that range as well. So I think we're starting to get used to having a lot of King stuff. So it's going to be a hard landing for us in a few years when it's not as much released. So, but it will definitely be a good year, 2019. Yeah.
And not only a lot of stuff, a lot of really good stuff. I mean,
yes.
there were times in the 80s when there was, the King movie of the week showing up, but how many of them do we really consider to be, all that memorable or all that good? Where nowadays we get things like, Gerald's Game and It, and 1922, all of them really, really well done.
Yep. And there's other rumblings again of the Dark Tower series being prepped for Amazon Prime, but I haven't got any. I've only seen one report of that, and I haven't got any confirmation, and there's been no official word from any party that would matter. But we, fingers crossed that will find new life in some format. I know Amazon Prime is spending a lot of money on the Lord of the Rings series and that, and Wheel of Time and whatnot. So hopefully the Dark Tower will eventually find its way to some sort of streaming service as a series as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that they are dragging on it a little bit, so people can forget about the movie first and be happy about it again. I think if it say that they would have done it and released it this spring here, I think a lot of people would have skipped it just because they still have a bad taste from the movie. So I think it's good that people put some distance to that one before the series is out, and hopefully they can do it justice and do a good one.
Yeah, we'll see.
There's just so much stuff. Sometimes it's really hard to keep up. Not just with King stuff, but so many streaming services now with so much good content.
Yes, for sure. Like if you have Amazon Prime, I've just gone through The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and The Expanse, which is a fantastic science fiction series. And I got to do all of this while I was lying on my back. I went through 3 seasons of Luther, which is
Luther. Yeah.
Offshoot of one of Neil Gaiman's works from Sandman. So and then there's then I got a stack of shows, and Netflix just dropped some series that's sort of like a bunch of animated shorts about robots, love and death, or something like that.
Joe Lansdale's got something to do with that one, I think.
It's just unbelievable the amount of content coming out. But I think 2019 for King, 3 movies, that's unbelievable for one writer to have 3 movies out in the same year.
Yeah,
that has to be a record.
Hearing you say that, I sort of stop and realize how exceptional it is. With King, there's always seems to be things in the works, so I never really stood back and said not just 3 films, but 3 big screen, as opposed to Netflix adaptations and things like that. 3 major motion pictures, as they used to call them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and one thing that's really exciting for me being a non-American is that usually, or a couple of years ago, when the new King movie was released, it didn't even make the cinemas here. It just went straight to DVD.
Oh, wow.
So I know all these 3 will be released to the cinemas this year here in Sweden as well. So That's
Nice.
a huge thing here
Do
in
they
Sweden.
do they release
So
them in English with subtitles then, or do they dub them?
yeah, no, subtitles. We don't dub anything here except children's TV shows and stuff like that. Otherwise, we
okay.
don't dub anything, which
Okay.
I think is very good. I do not love dubbed things.
I don't
Yeah.
either. I watch a
No.
lot of Scandinavian crime series, and by
Yep.
default it comes up with the dubbed English, and I immediately hit my remote control and say, "Play it for me in Danish, Swedish, Finnish, whichever it is, and show me the
Yeah.
subtitles."
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I
that's
do the
always
same
better.
thing. Yeah. Okay, well, any last thoughts? I think we've come to the end of the chat. I'll just give you guys a chance to make your fond farewells and let me know if you got anything else that you wanted to say. So, Hans?
Yeah, it was fun to be back. It's been a couple of episodes, so fun to be back and talking again. And I think you do a great job with the podcast. Personally, I enjoy them much more when my voice isn't there interrupting. So I like it.
It's tough to talk by yourself. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but you do a good job. I think perfect. So and it's going to be a good year. A lot of things happening and a lot of things to look forward to. So as we said back in 2017, it's a good year to be a King fan.
Right.
Yeah.
Bev?
No, thanks for having me on again, and congratulations on hitting the centenarian mark.
Thank you.
Hope that your recovery is going along apace and that you'll be out square dancing very soon.
Yeah, because we still square dance a heck of a lot up here in Canada, especially out west. Yeah, that's great. You mentioned that you have your collaboration with Brian Keane potentially coming out this year.
Yes, we're not.
Yeah,
I don't think we've completely established which publisher it will come from. We've got a couple of things in the pipeline, but getting the final draft from Brian means that we can finally push that one forward.
Awesome.
It'll be the longest piece of fiction that I've ever published.
Nice. Looking forward to reading it. And well, to all the listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed this 100th episode. I certainly had a blast having some voices to shout back at me for a change. So that was a lot of fun. And boy, what a year we're in for. April 5th isn't that far away, and then it'll be King Overdrive for the rest of the year. So Hans and Bev, thank you both very much for coming on.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed this one. And as always, stay safe, but
stay scared.
All right. Very good. Your old training is still there. All right. So there we go, folks.
Reflex.
That's it. Yeah. The end. Bool.